Hi everyone, it's Karen here. Welcome to another video from me. Today I'm going to share with you how I created this card using two of the new release stamps, the Tree of Hope and the Tree of Courage, this gorgeous little fairy shop set 2, the large path mini hives, and I've got a couple of stencils for texture in the background. I've got Feather Leaf and this one round the edge is called Elegance. I'm using two colours in Distress Oxides, Mowed Lawn, Rustic Wilderness. I'm also going to be using an assortment of coloured pencils to colour in the roofs and the little parts of the fairy shop set too, and bits of the trees. So greens and browns, you'll see what we use when we get to them. So the sized card that I'm using, this ended up being 17 centimetres by 14 centimetres, but I started with a slightly larger card, 300 GSM Super Smooth. I started with a slightly larger card so that depending on how my swirl went around the outside, I could chop it down as I wished. So we'll get started. So first thing I'm going to do is take my gorgeous tree and ink it up with VersaFine Clair Nocturne. The detail on these trees is amazing. Right, and I'm just going to, I put my finger over that there. And I'm just going to place this first tree on the side. So now, VersaFine Clair Nocturne is an oil-based ink, which means that once we've stamped, we're going to be able to paint over it with our Distress Oxides. That's how we got this lovely washed paint effect over the top. As I said, the detail on these trees is amazing. So there's our first tree in place, and then we're going to ink our fairy shops set up. There are two sets of these fairy shops. There's a fairy shops 1 and fairy shops 2. This one says shops about bows and buttons. Now we're going to place this. We just want it looking so that it's sort of nestled in between these trees. Then I'm going to take my second tree and I'm going to ink that up. Again, using VersaFine Clair Nocturne, it just gives us the detail that we need and want in these stamps. And so I'm just going to eyeball it so that the two trees surround these gorgeous little shops. It's as though they're nestled in a little forest setting. Just look at the detail on those stamps. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. Then I'm going to take my large path stamp. I've got a piece of paper, copy paper, which I've just torn, and I'm just going to tear it relatively flat. And then I'm going to take my large path and I'm going to put it the right way up, leading from the main shop out into the forest. This is lovely. There are a few little sprigs of grass. There we go. So we just use that other piece of paper as a mask and hey presto, there we have it. How lovely is that? Now, it shouldn't smudge, but just in case, I'm going to give it a quick blast with a heat gun. And then I'm going to start with Mowed Lawn, smush a bit onto my mat, give it a little spritz with my water bottle to create a little wash of paint. And taking a 1-inch wide brush, you can use any brush you like, but I quite like the wide one. It gives me a nice even wash. Okay, and this is where you have to be brave. I'm creating a little wash here, smushing the ink around, loading up my brush, and then here we go. We're going to, because this is in a circular enclosed little setting, that's the look that we want to have in our little houses. Simple. Then I'm going to do the same with my rustic wilderness. Create a bit of smushing on my mat, pop it up with some water. I'm probably not going to wash my brush off because it's green anyway. Again, loading up your brush so you've got a nice wash of paint on it. And we're just going to do the same again around the outside, creating this lovely flow around the edge. There we go. Just washing off your paintbrush. I always wash my paintbrushes straight after using them, and I dry them. I don't leave them in the water. It damages some of the pieces of it. Okay, we're just going to let that dry for a couple of seconds. Before taking our little mini hive and again inking it up with VersaFine Clair. Now, I think in my original it was too dark, so I'm just going to stamp these off 2nd generation and stamp them at different heights. Where do I want this one? I've stamped the shops slightly differently to the original. Don't forget to stamp it off. We'll pop that one just there. So it looks like the hives are just hanging from the branches on the tree. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my feather leaf stencil and I'm just going to create some little pieces of texture coming in from the trees so it looks a bit like foliage popping down. And again, I'm using tone on tone here. So for the center, I used Mowed Lawn, so I'm going to go in with Mowed Lawn. Inking up my blending sponge. So you can see I'm selecting the parts of the stencil that I want. So this tree trunk curves round, so I'm going to choose a feather leaf that curves around. So it looks like it's all part of the same story. And this one here is coming over quite nicely. And because it's a bit abstracted, you can't get it wrong. You really can't. You can't be too particular about it. Lovely. Okay, now we're going to go in with our Elegance stencil, changing up our colour because we use Rustic Wilderness on the outside. So I'm going to use Rustic Wilderness on the outside. With my blending sponge, I'm not washing it, I'm just going to rub it on a piece of kitchen towel. And if you are using multiple different types of blending sponges into your inks, keep the ones that you use in the oxide inks separate from your distressing inks. You don't want to mix oxides and the normal distress inks. So I'm turning the stencil around here, again trying to create this encapsulated look, this sort of forest setting. So using different parts of the stencil here. Voila. And I'll just spritz those off with a bit of water to clean them and dry them with my towel. So now the fun bit. This is the bit where you just let that little child inside of you come out to play. I've picked I use the Derwent Inktense pencils. The colour on them is very rich. So I've just used light olive, Sicilian yellow, burnt orange and mild vermilion. One more, and this one doesn't even have a name on it. Oh, tin, this is called. So there's a mixture of browns, greens and a bit of yellows, and I'm just going to colour the different parts of the shops. I'm using the same colours between the shops to create synergy across the piece, but I'm not being too careful about which I use where. I'm just going to pick them up and play with the next colour. And because the stamps have so much detail on them, Tracy's done all the work, so we can just colour in the lines. So you can see, I just went backwards and forwards with my various colours. I kept pretty similar colours. I've only got 5 here, and I think that doesn't detract from the background. Now I've got a bit of an inky smudge there, but fortunately for me, that I will be chopping off with when I chop my card down to size. But that is something to remember. The other thing I also did was I coloured in the trunks of the trees, and I also did some extra shading around the path. That just highlights the path. So I'm going in with this light olive colour, and I'm just gently going around the edges of the path. I will also go around the bottom of the shops, again just to create a bit of extra depth, give it a bit of a shadow so it looks as though it's part of the ground. I'm also going to take my little Sharpie pen, fine liner, and you'll see in the path there are sprigs of grass. Well, I'd quite like This pen's not working. I'd quite like a few more of those around my shops. Again, it just creates continuity, making this look like an integrated piece. And I might put some more around the tree trunk here. Let's stop there, we won't go too mad. Right, I'm just going to finish colouring around my path. And finally, the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white pen and I'm just going to colour in the windows so that it looks a bit more like there's light coming in from the backs of these top windows. I don't mind the bottom windows because they look sort of like a silhouette anyway. So there we have it. Let me chop that down and I'll come back to you. So there we have it. I've chopped it slightly down to size. Fortunately got rid of that inky mark on the edge. And I would then just mount it with a little olive green card and my bigger card to frame it. So thanks so much for joining me. I do hope you'll have a go and I'd love to see what you make. Thanks for watching. Bye.